Welcome, fellow entrepreneurship students, to the Military Future Scan. My name is Bernadette Carbon, and I'm joined by Tommy Gilbert and Andrew Hill. We are presenting this project for Entrepreneurship 301 Innovative Leadership. Within the U.S. military, we'll be analyzing future energy sources, enhancements to vehicles and transportation, state-of-the-art weaponry, potential uniform upgrades, and the progression of eligibility requirements and fitness standards. We'll start with the military of the past and how they've transformed to the military we see now. Then we'll dive into how the military of the future could look. We've broken up the topic of military into 5 sections: energy sources, eligibility, transportation, uniforms, and weaponry. We'll begin by analyzing the past and present of these topics, and then we'll move to the future and see how these areas are evolving. We'd like to start with an overview of the military generations of warfare, which will give us an idea of the history of the military. The first generation of military warfare was known as tactics of line and column. This generation started in 2000 BC and ended in 1500. In this generation of military, the winning side was the side that had the numbers. More numbers meant more power, and more power meant you won. The second generation was termed the Age of the Machines and covers over 3 centuries. This is when artillery begins development and mass destructive power becomes more prominent. With larger caliber guns, the number of casualties rose dramatically. This generation ended in 1830 and made way for the third generation, known as the Age of Systems. This is when we began integrating technology into warfare and planning out war strategies. Improved logistics also paved the way for enhanced war tactics. Finally, the fourth and current generation, which began in 1945, is the Age of Automation. Improved network structures allowed for the communication in real time, which was essential to knowing the enemy's next move. As a result of the improvements to networks and communications, the demand for energy rapidly increased. While we won't use these terms of military generation specifically throughout the presentation, we did want to give you guys an idea of the big picture. Our past topics are primarily focused in the second and third generations, while our future topics are the current generation. We'll begin by looking at the history of military uniforms. There have been many changes over the past 240 years to the military uniform. During the Revolutionary War, soldiers wore wool jackets and the famous tricorner hats, as pictured on the left. During the warmer months, they wore light underclothes, and during the colder months, they wore wool underclothes. Moving into the Civil War period, they are still wearing wool jackets, but they now have long trousers, also made of wool, and the hats are now a short bill. World War I was an entirely different look. The wool is still being used, but they've now transitioned to metal helmets. Soldiers are equipped with some survival gear to better prepare themselves for the battlefield. World War II is when the wool starts to get phased out and the uniform gets a more modern look. More accessories are being worn to better carry their equipment, and the helmet changes to better protect the head. Moving on to the Korean and Vietnam Wars, soldiers are now wearing cotton blends due to the humid terrains. The color of the uniform is now officially the olive drab to better blend into their surroundings. They are issued field jackets during the Korean War due to the harsh winters. Now we'll talk about the history of military transportation. Before the invention of vehicles, the military traveled either on foot or by riding horses. during World War I is when we begin to see vehicles on the battlefield. Some of the vehicles used during this time period were the Model 1917 Holt, the Ford 1916 Model T Field Ambulance, and the Mark 8 tank. World War II brought little changes to the vehicles due to the similarities in the terrain. The upgrades included the 2.5-ton surgical ambulance, the Willys MB Jeep, and the M4 Sherman tank. During the Korean War, we encountered a more jungle-like environment and the vehicles needed to be more maneuverable. This included an upgrade to the Willys Jeep, but the M4 Sherman tank is still being used. In the Vietnam War, transporting troops by helicopter became a necessity due to the endless jungle terrain and large rice fields. The Huey is the primary helicopter used for transportation. The tank upgrades to an M551 Sheridan because it is quicker and more compact. Now we'll take a look at the evolution of military weaponry. Before guns were primarily produced in America, we had to import many of our weapons. This limited us to using muskets and cannons. While we did have some rifles that we imported from France, the muskets were easier and faster to reload, so they were the primary weapon. Pictured on the right is the American long rifle, which was used during the Revolutionary and Civil Wars. On the left is the Thompson submachine gun, which was used during World War II. The M60 machine gun, also known as the Pig, was used during the Vietnam and Gulf War. Here we see an evolution of the gun throughout military history, starting in the Revolutionary War, up to the guns we still use today. The American long rifle, the M1903 Springfield, the M1 Garand, which was the first standard issue semi-automatic rifle, the M16 rifle, another standard issue weapon prior to the M4, and the M1911, which was a standard issue sidearm for the U.S. military from 1911 to 1985. It is still used by Army Special Forces and elite units in the Marine Corps and Navy. Let's take a look at the timeline of the eligibility requirements for the military. When the Army was founded in 1775, there were some basic requirements: 2 arms, 2 legs, jump, squat, but nothing close to the combat tests we see today. When the military draft was enacted, every able-bodied man went to the draft, which again did have some requirements, but upon the ending of the draft in 1975, the Army designed the physical fitness test in 1980, which is what we see today. And the final aspect of military history that we're going to look at are the energy sources. Prior to the use of fossil fuels, men and animals, primarily horses, were how we generated power. This gives literal meaning to the word horsepower, which is equivalent to 550 foot-pounds per second, or translated, that's the power needed to move 33,000 pounds a distance of 1 foot in 1 minute. Horses not only carried men into war, but also their weapons. Moving on to our present military, we'll continue with energy sources and see how the military generates energy today. We've moved on from the power of horses to the power of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels provide us energy from 3 sources: coal, natural gas, and petroleum. The military's dependency on fossil fuels creates problems when the prices of oil spike, which means more money spent on energy and less money spent on our soldiers. Long gone are the days of wool coats and tri-corner hats. Let's look at the current military uniform. The soldier today has adopted a digital camouflage, which blends in with surrounding terrain. It is lightweight, breathable, and dries faster than previous uniforms. The boots are now designed for comfortability, and the soldiers are equipped with Kevlar helmets and bulletproof vests. Here is a more current picture of the Army combat uniform, which was based off of the Marine Corps' digital pattern uniform. It was introduced in 2004, and in addition to the Kevlar helmet, they also have moisture socks, a t-shirt, and camouflage jacket and pants. There are 6 other digital camouflage colors that the military uses depending on the environment. They are also equipped with night vision goggles for night operations. While the military still uses tanks and helicopters, we've come a long way in the past few generations. We'll look at how the military travels on land, in the air, and at sea. Some of the vehicles we see on land are the Bradley fighting vehicle, the M1151 Humvee, and the M107OA1. The Bradley fighting vehicle is a mobile machine that provides lethality, survivability, and mobility. It is an integral part of the U.S. military. The M1151 is armored with a spinning turret, and the M107OA1 transports heavy equipment such as tanks. In the air, the military uses the F-18 Super Hornet, the MQ-9 Reaper drone, and the B-2 stealth bomber. The F-18 Super Hornet is the primary strike aircraft because it has long-lasting fuel and missile range. The MQ-9 Reaper drone is a drone that collects intelligence by air. The B-2 stealth bomber is a bomber with long range and easily penetrates enemy defenses. The B-2 bomber is the most survivable plane in the world. The Zumwalt class destroyer, the Navy Ghost, and the Ohio class guided missile submarine are all vehicles that the military uses at sea. The Zumwalt is a guided missile destroyer and is used for anti-aircraft warfare. It's stealthy and so it's hard to detect. The destroyer also helps with land attacks. The Navy Ghost is undetectable by radar and carries Nemesis missiles. The Ohio class-guided missile submarine aids the military with special missions. Now, we'll take a look at some of the weaponry that's used today, including handguns, rifles, and light machine guns. The Beretta M9 was the primary handgun of the military for over 30 years. It's lightweight and holds 15 rounds. It was recently replaced by the Sig Sauer P320. The Sig Sauer P320, or M17, is adaptable with changeable grips and pistol sizes. The M17 holds 17 rounds and has 3-dot iron sights on the rear and on the front. Moving on to rifles, we have the M16 and the M4. The M16 can be semi-automatic or automatic. Semi-automatic means you must pull the trigger for each fire. Automatic means holding the trigger to let off multiple rounds. The M16 holds 20 to 30 rounds, has a firing range of 450 meters, and is one of the most common rifles carried by the military. The design of the barrel of the weapon helps with recoil, accuracy, and muzzle climb. The M4, on the other hand, is used for close quarters, but has improved handling to engage targets at further distances. It has a firing range of 600 meters, and it is a common issue rifle of the military. Next, we have light machine guns, the M249 and the M240. The M249 is typically mounted on a Humvee or on a stand, but it can be carried and holds 600 rounds of ammunition. It has a range of about 3,600 meters and is the commonly used light machine gun by the military. The M240 is mounted on a bipod, but can also be mounted on Humvees and helicopters. It has more power than the 249, but holds less rounds. It has a range of 3,725 meters and is used by the Army to offer support fire to field artillery units. Finally, we have sniper rifles, the M110 and the M107. The M110 has a range of about 800 meters and is used in close combat zones, especially in urban areas. The M107 has a longer range, about 2,000 meters, and causes more damage than the M110. It weighs about 35 pounds, including all of the attachments. It has a detachable muzzle to reduce weapons recoil. For our final present military topic, we'll be discussing the eligibility requirements and the progression of fitness standards. The fitness standards within each branch differ slightly, but most tests include a basic strength and endurance test. We'll be using the APFT, or the Army Physical Fitness Test, as our example. Currently, the APFT consists of a timed run, timed push-ups event, and timed sit-up event. Each person that takes the test has a minimum they must complete to pass the test. The results are then based off of age and gender. The timed 2-mile run has a minimum requirement ranging from 16 minutes and 36 seconds to 20 minutes and 36 seconds. The timed push-ups event ranges in minimum requirements from 11 push-ups to 35 push-ups. And the timed sit-ups event ranges in a minimum requirement from 43 sit-ups to 47 sit-ups. Now we're going to move on to the MilitaryFutureScan, and we'll analyze potential energy sources, the increasing fitness standards, uniform upgrades, future transportation, and potential future weaponry. Moving right into where we left off with fitness standards, we'll take a look at what's in store for the physical fitness test of the Army. The Army has undergone a major makeover to their fitness test. Beginning next year, the APFT becomes the ACFT, which stands for Army Combat Fitness Test. The new test will contain the following 6 events. The 3-repetition maximum deadlift, which tests overall body strength. A standing power throw, which tests the upper body power. The push-up is still a part of the event, but now requires a hands release at the bottom and is a good test of upper body strength. The sprint, drag, carry, which is a tactical part of the test. The crunch has evolved to the hanging leg tuck to better test core strength. And the 2-mile run is still included as a test of endurance. These tests will each have a maximum score of 100 points, for a total maximum score of 600 points. Finding new ways to harness energy is going to be critical for the military, considering the technological enhancements that are occurring. we'll look at biofuel and how that could prove useful in military application. Energy consumption per soldier has increased from 1 gallon per day during World War II to 4 gallons per day during the Desert Storm. Not only has the demand for energy increased, but the type of energy needed during war has also increased. We're powering devices that weren't being used before, and the military is looking for new energy sources to sustain these technologies. Biofuel is an energy source the military is pursuing. Biofuel converts chemical energy from hydrogen, sugar, and alcohol into electrical energy using redox enzymes. Currently, portable energy is typically harnessed from batteries, which use a metal catalyst. Biofuel has the potential to power cameras, transmitters, actuators, and wireless sensor networks. It is cheaper than the metal catalyst that batteries require and would eliminate the need to constantly replace batteries. While this is a great contender for future source of energy for the military, it has not yet been successful in practical applications. Now we'll see how the uniforms of the military could look in the future. This is called the soft exoskeleton, and it is being developed by DARPA. It is also called the wearable robot and contains inbuilt sensors that match to each individual. Microcomputers working within the robot can increase strength and endurance to the user wearing the robot. This is still being tested and could be a game changer to our military in combat situations. Next, we'll be looking at transportation of the future military. The amphibious combat vehicle, or armored personal carrier, can be operated on land and on sea. It can hold up to 17 Marines, and it will feature a satellite radar system and an attached cannon. Not only will we need to be able to transport people, but we'll also need to be able to transport messages. Let's look at how the military is planning to do that. Here we have the self-destructing polymer, which can be used to transport highly sensitive material. The polymers can vaporize immediately, being triggered by the sun or by an internal mechanism. It can travel over 100 miles and avoids detection by the enemy. It also eliminates the need for device recovery, which can be useful when delivering to hostile territory. Finally, we'll be looking at future weaponry and how the military is currently using some of this technology. The synthetic training environment and combat simulation uses VR technology. Similar terrains and situations can be recreated and provide for more repetitions for optimal training. This is safe and cost-effective, as they are not having to physically transport the soldiers, and the controlled environment means actual weapons aren't being used. The feedback is immediate for those facilitating the training, and as we've seen in other presentations so far, VR is being used everywhere, and the military is taking full advantage of the technology as well. Another technology the military is experimenting with is the self-guiding bullet. Instead of a sniper firing a bullet and hoping it hits the target, the self-guiding bullet uses a laser to shine on the target. The optical sensor on the bullet detects the light from the laser to identify the target, and once the bullet is fired, actuators inside the bullet receive data from the optical sensor to guide the bullet to its correct location. Fins inside the bullet change the bullet's trajectory, and the bullet can correct its movements 30 times per second. This can be exceptionally useful in a combat situation where a soldier may only get one chance to take a shot, and if they miss, they may not get another chance to shoot, especially if the target is moving. This concludes the Military Future Scan. We hope you enjoyed learning about our U.S. military today, and we welcome any feedback, criticism, and commentary. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check out our activity guide and resource guide for more information. Good luck on the quiz!